The stock market is crashing, investors are panicking, and Donald Trump is losing it. His second term was supposed to be about restoring America's economic dominance, but instead, it's chaos, and he's blaming everyone but himself. With tariffs sparking a global trade war and the markets spiraling, Trump's frustration has reached a boiling point. He's lashing out at Canada, Mexico, and China, accusing them of abusing the US and draining its wealth.
Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years.
But the real question is this just another Trump power move, or is he pushing the economy toward disaster? Let's break it all down. Trump's public outbursts. The economic freefall is in full motion. The Dow, Nasdaq Composite, and S&P 500 are tanking, sending investors into panic mode as they scramble to sell off assets and cut their losses. But it's not just Wall Street feeling the heat. Everyday Americans are paying the price. Jobs are disappearing as companies slash costs, inflation is soaring, and businesses are struggling to stay afloat. The White House is in full-blown damage control, but nothing seems to be stopping the downward spiral. This isn't how Trump's second term was supposed to go. 2025 began with Trump defeating former Vice President Kamala Harris, but ever since stepping back into office, he's been at the center of controversy. From his hush money trial to people walking out of his rallies to the financial war he's waging against global powers, Trump has mastered the art of keeping the world glued to his every move. Recently, the United States president claimed that Canada, Mexico, and China allegedly owe the United States a lot of money, and it is time for the US to collect her money. When Trump was saying this, he had already made up his mind that he was going to impose a 25% tariff on imports from both Canada and Mexico. China was also not spared as the 47th president imposed a 10% additional tariff on the Asian superpower. The president's action created quite a stir among the countries, and financial experts foresaw the tragic fall of financial markets and some currencies. In defense of his actions, the 47th president claimed that the reason why he had decided to go on with the tariffs was because he was concerned about the drug trafficking and illegal immigration that had been going on in the US. These two things were part of his manifesto when he was running against Kamala Harris, and he had promised that he was going to put an end to such things as he is on the quest to what he famously calls making America great again. At the time that the president imposed the 25% tariffs on both Canada and Mexico, he promised that he was going to approach the two countries to discuss the tariffs and try to find an amicable solution to the situation. According to him, Americans would also feel the pain from the 25% tariffs, but he argued that the pain would be worth the price. Donald Trump also added that despite the short-term pinch that the United States might feel during the trade war, the US has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. He added that the United States had trade deficits with almost every country in the world. He also claimed that it was unfair that the US had to go through such pain for years, but he affirmed that his government is going to turn things around. According to the United States president, the move of imposing harsh tariffs on Mexico and Canada will force the two countries to act and stop the flow of fentanyl and immigrants across the border. In defense, the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, claimed that she does not agree with what the United States president said about Mexico's alliances with criminal organizations. She wrote a statement where she said, "Mexico not only does not want fentanyl to reach the United States, but anywhere. Therefore, if the United States wants to combat criminal groups that traffic drugs and generate violence, we must work together in an integrated manner, but always under the principles of shared responsibility, mutual trust, collaboration, and above all, respect for sovereignty, which is not negotiable." Beyond national security, Trump's tariffs were also designed as a form of economic protectionism, aiming to shield American workers from losing jobs to undocumented immigrants. He viewed the tariffs as a bargaining tool, using them as leverage in trade negotiations with other countries to ensure fairer agreements. During the height of the tariff dispute, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau revealed that he had not spoken with Trump since his inauguration in January, a sign of the growing tensions between the two leaders. But what truly stunned media commentators was Trump's blunt criticism of Canada during a press conference at Joint Base Andrews. In a striking remark, he accused Canada of being very abusive toward the US in trade relations.
Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years. They don't allow our banks. Did you know that? Canada does not allow banks to go in. If you think about it, that's pretty amazing. If we have a U.S. bank, they don't allow them to go in.
The Canadian Prime Minister had taken to X encouraging Canadians to purchase their homemade products, where he wrote, "Now is the time to choose products made right here in Canada. Check the labels. Let's do our part. Wherever we can, choose Canada." This was one of the statements that made the United States president feel like Canada was not reciprocating the good deeds that the US has been showing to Canada. He said,
"Canada's been very tough on oil, on energy. They don't allow our farm products in, essentially. They don't allow a lot of things in, and we allow everything to come in. It's been a one-way street.
According to the US president, the United States subsidizes Canada a whopping sum of $200 billion each year. He also added that on a personal level, he does love the people of Canada. But according to him, the main problem between the United States and Canada is the kind of leadership that Canada has. During the interview with the reporters at the Joint Base Andrews, he affirmed that something ought to be done to make sure that the United States also gets to profit from its relationship with Canada. The president also added the European Union to the mix, claiming that the European Union has a whopping $300 billion trade deficit with the United States.
They don't take our cars, they don't take our farm products, they take almost nothing. And we take everything from them, millions of cars, tremendous amounts of food and farm products. So the UK is way out of line, and we'll see. The UK, but European Union is really out of line.
The Republican leader also talked about the prospect of cutting off aid that the United States had been offering to South Africa after its president signed a controversial land seizure measure. Trump claimed that there were terrible things that were happening in South Africa. He added that the leadership in the African nation was responsible for these terrible and horrible things, claiming that the whole saga is currently under investigation. This came after he had accused South Africa of treating certain classes of people very badly. Trump's statements during the interview with the reporters at the Joint Base Andrews created quite a stir, especially when he added that the harsh tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China will be imposed sooner rather than later. But the question on everyone's lips is, how did the markets crash? The catalysts that led to the market crash. During the morning hours of Tuesday, March 4, 2025, Trump decided to make good on his threats. This came after the United States made a statement on Truth Social on Thursday, February 27, 2025, saying, "Drugs are still pouring into our country from Mexico and Canada at very high and unacceptable levels. We cannot allow this scourge to continue to harm the USA, and therefore, until it stops or is seriously limited, the proposed tariffs scheduled to go into effect on March 4th will indeed go into effect as scheduled." The immediate market reaction was brutal. The moment Trump made this declaration, investors panicked. The Dow Jones dropped 0.45%, the S&P 500 slid 1.59%, and the Nasdaq Composite took a staggering 2.78% hit, all in a single day. Whispers of impending financial disaster began spreading, with traders fearing an all-out trade war that could wreck the US stock market and drain investors' pockets. Meanwhile, savvy traders saw an opportunity, preparing to profit from the volatility. But the confusion didn't end there. In his first cabinet meeting on February 26, 2025, Trump hinted that the tariffs on Mexico and Canada wouldn't take effect until April 2nd, leaving many to believe there would be room for negotiations or even a delay. However, just one day later, Trump dropped a bombshell on Truth Social. The tariffs were happening sooner than expected, and when March 4th arrived, the impact was even more severe than analysts had predicted. The Dow plunged nearly 700 points by the end of the trading day, sparking market-wide panic. Suddenly, the narrative had shifted from speculation to an all-out financial crisis. For those watching closely, it was clear a financial war was brewing. Mexico, Canada, and China, three of America's largest trading partners, didn't take the tariffs lightly. Within hours of the US announcement, China and Canada retaliated with tariffs of their own, targeting key American industries. China announced tariffs on goods such as agricultural imports from the United States, chicken, pork, and beef. Still on the same day, the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, spoke during a press conference where he said that his government will not back down from a fight. Speaking during the press conference, the Canadian Prime Minister said that in 21 days' time, the Canadian government will also impose tariffs on United States products, which would be around 25% tariff on US goods worth $20.7 billion. The thing about this tariff imposed by Canada on US goods is that it only covers 20% of the goods imported from the United States, and the remaining 80% of the goods will be taxed after 21 days. Justin Trudeau directed his remarks toward Donald J. Trump when he said,
"But Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do."
But the drama didn't stop there. Mexico quickly fired back, making it clear that this trade war was far from one-sided. On Tuesday, March 4, 2025, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum announced that her government would be imposing retaliatory tariffs on US imports, set to take effect on Sunday, March 9, 2025. Speaking at a news conference in Mexico City, Sheinbaum didn't hold back, calling out the US for its aggressive stance. She said, "The unilateral decision made by the United States affects national and foreign companies operating in our country. country, as well as our people. And just like that, the markets took another hit. Even before the tariffs were set in motion, the fallout was already in full swing. On Monday, March 3rd, 2025, Wall Street saw a massive sell-off, sending shockwaves through the financial world. By the end of the day, the S&P 500 had suffered its worst drop since December of the previous year. The chief market strategist at Cal Bay Investments, Clark Garagan, wrote about this whole saga saying, "While Tuesday's tariffs are a go, it remains unclear on just how long these tariffs will remain. We tend to believe these are more of a negotiation tactic and not the start of a long and drawn-out reciprocal trade war. Still, in these situations, investors sell first and ask questions later, as seen during Monday's sell-off. But not everyone saw this as a long-term disaster. Another financial expert, a portfolio strategist at LPL Financial, offered a different perspective. In an email statement, he acknowledged the severity of the market drop, but urged investors to look at the bigger picture. He said, "While every situation is different, historically, buying the dip after such single-day declines has been a successful strategy on average." Now, there is something that we all have to look at here. You see, when Trump was speaking to the reporters at Joint Base Andrews, it was around early February 2025, and even though his statement had an effect on the market, it was neutralized later on. People started feeling that the main reason why the United States president was pulling such moves was not 100% due to the illegal immigration and drug trafficking that has been going on for years, but the president was just looking for ways to make other countries do what he wants. It looked more like a negotiation strategy. But one thing that people should understand is that despite the fact that this so-called negotiation strategy might look as if it might just work initially, these kinds of moves often wear off with time, especially if the other party at the other end of the negotiation gets tired of such moves. I mean, we all have elastic limits, and at some point, someone might end up snapping, something that the United States might not like. You might be wondering why it might be tough on the United States, given it is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, superpower in the whole world. You see, the US does rely on imports very much, and some of these imports come from the affected countries, Mexico, Canada, and China. Products as popular as the iPhone are being manufactured in China, and let's just face it, the iPhone is by far one of the most used mobile phones in the United States. The iPhone would also be affected by these new tariffs that were imposed by President Donald Trump, and we are just getting started on the affected products. We should all keep in mind that about 9% of the cars that are being sold in the United States are made in Canada. In addition to that, 14% of the cars that are being sold in the United States are made in Mexico. As a result, big money companies such as Ford and GM will end up being hurt in this so-called trade war that has begun due to the tariffs that have been imposed by the Republican leader. Now, let us all just be a little bit logical here and look at these things the way they are without being biased. The notice period for these tariffs was very short. I mean, such kind of high tariffs should at least be given a long grace period for everyone to get a minute to adjust themselves to the new changes accordingly. You see, building new factories and companies does not take such short periods, and consumers of products such as iPhone, Ford, and GM in the United States will start to feel the pinch almost immediately. There are no new factories to replace the entire supply chain that has just been affected by these new tariffs, affecting both consumers and local businesses in the United States which deal with these products. Financial experts do predict that these tariffs might end up being somewhat beneficial to the United States in the long run, but in the short term, the effects will be more than just devastating. These experts feel like almost everything in the United States will start getting expensive, and people will have suffered a lot in the immediate impact of these tariffs. This entire saga is unfolding at a time when US President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held a high-stakes meeting at the Oval Office. According to widespread reactions online, the meeting did not go well, especially for Zelensky. One immediate consequence: growing hesitation among European countries when it comes to purchasing US products and services. But behind closed doors, word on the street is that the real reason the meeting went south for Ukraine was Trump's aggressive push to bring the war to an end fast. Insiders suggest the US president was tightening his grip on Zelensky, pressuring him to negotiate with Putin and reach a settlement as soon as possible. For those who do not quite understand how the financial markets work, let us take out our notebooks and learn a thing or two. You see, whenever there is a major news announcement like the new tariffs, or just major news like the meeting at the Oval House, the financial markets tend to become very volatile. As a result, the market ended up having very huge moves, and that is why there was a massive sell-off. At times like these, most investors tend to sell their assets and just try to assess the situation and see how things will go from there so that they can make a decision on which way to go. At the moment, it is very clear that the markets are not very happy with what is currently going on between the United States and the other countries. This is mainly because these countries and the United States are very close trading partners, and such kinds of events are not very good for business. Some traders are trying to go by Warren Buffett's words words when he said that people should buy the markets when other people in the market are fearful. But in reality, no one really knows where the market will be heading. One thing that everyone should keep in mind is that most retail traders might definitely keep away from the market. This is because most of these retail traders were not even old enough to work, let alone invest, the last time that something like this happened. This was during the financial crash that happened from 2007 to 2009. One thing that people should understand is that with the current surge in prices of commodities in the United States Federal Bank won't be able to do anything to control the prices and bring them a bit down. This is because the rise in prices is not because there is too much demand for commodities or that the economy is running too hard, but it is simply because of the hefty taxation that is being imposed on by the new tariffs. And even if there will be a decline in the demand of commodities, the prices might still continue to go up. Now, this whole thing that is currently going on is being compared to the Great Depression of the 1930s. According to a report that was shared by the Wall Street Journal, the Deputy Secretary General of the International Chamber of Commerce, Andrew Wilson, said, "Our deep concern is that this could be the start of a downward spiral that puts us in the 1930s trade war territory. No one really knows what is going to happen next, but despite the fact that people always say that it is the hope that kills you, people have no option but to remain hopeful that things might cool down and everything will go back to normal. Some people do feel like the Republican leader is allegedly crashing the market on purpose. Trump is crashing the market on purpose. First of all, we all need to understand that various people have different opinions on the current regime, and according to financial experts, the markets are sometimes influenced by the ruling regime, and sometimes things might end up being bad based on the kind of rules and regulations that the ruling regime ends up setting. According to a financial expert known as Darius Dale, who is the founder and CEO of 42 Macro, the current regime in the United States might have a negative impact on the US economy. Speaking during an interview, Darius said,
"One of the things that our grid model has been signaling for months now is that U.S. economic growth is likely to slow and actually slow faster than consensus expects. So that's new. That's different from where we've been for most of the past 2+ years."
Darius said that according to the model that they have been using for years, their prediction was that the United States economy would continue to grow, but due to the tough measures that have been set up by the 47th President of the United States, they are now expecting the exact opposite of what they initially expected. One thing that people should understand about this narrative from Darius Dale is that he does actually think that the government is purposely tanking the market so that they can build a foundation of strength and bring the economy back up, plus fulfill some of the items in their manifesto. Darius went on further to compare the second regime of Donald Trump to that of Ronald Reagan. According to him, it is almost as if Trump is trying to use what he terms as kitchen sinking.
They're essentially trying to transition from a demand-side economy and fiscal policy to a supply-side economy and fiscal policy, and that process could potentially be painful, at least in the short term. And this is exactly what we saw when Ronald Reagan became president.
During the early years of Ronald Reagan's presidency, the economy faced striking similarities to what's unfolding in Trump's second term. The S&P 500 took a hit, and the US was pushed into a recession as Reagan implemented his bold economic policies. Reagan's strategy? Kitchen sinking, a high-risk approach of front-loading economic pain to create a foundation for future growth. And now, many believe Trump is following the same playbook, deliberately shaking the markets in an attempt to reset the system on his terms. These kinds of techniques often spark trade war fears because most of the time a plunge in the market is often witnessed. But one thing that people should understand is that all of this is happening because the 47th president has announced that there will be no room for negotiation with Mexico or Canada. The moment Trump returned to the White House, the stock market became a roller coaster. At first, investors were optimistic, hoping for tax cuts and deregulation, but that optimism was short-lived. As soon as Trump started ramping up talk of harsh tariffs and stricter immigration policies, the mood shifted and investors began dumping assets. Now, the market is at a crossroads. No one knows which direction it will take. Some believe the US is headed for a prolonged period of economic and financial turbulence. Others argue that despite the volatility, Trump could still fuel another Wall Street rally. So, which will it be? Will the uncertainty drag the markets further down, or will Trump's gamble pay off? Some economic experts do feel like the policies that have been put forward by Trump's administration will create economic uncertainty in many Americans, and this type of economic uncertainty will keep on having a drastic impact on the market. But at the moment, there are financial experts who feel like the policies that have been set by the Republican leader are just sending mixed signals to the market. One thing that is clear is that whatever happens next in this whole saga of harsh tariffs will surely shape the financial future of the United States of America. However, it's important to recognize that many financial analysts, particularly those with a commerce-focused perspective, often assume that the stock market performs better under Republican leadership than under a Democratic administration. The logic behind this belief is that Republicans are generally considered pro-business, favoring market-friendly policies that should, in theory, drive economic growth and higher returns. But history tells a different story. Over the past 70 years, the stock market has actually delivered 9% higher returns under Democratic presidents compared to their Republican counterparts. Does this mean Democrats are inherently better at managing the economy? Not necessarily. More often than not, Democrats take office during economic downturns, inheriting markets that are already on the path to recovery. This timing advantage can create the illusion that their policies are solely responsible for economic growth, when, in reality, the rebound was already in motion. Take Barack Obama, for example. When he assumed office after the 2008 financial crisis, the stock market had already hit its lowest point. As the economy naturally rebounded, investors began buying low, and over time, the market surged. While his administration implemented measures to support recovery, a major part of the market's growth was simply the result of economic cycles. On the other hand, Republicans often take office during strong economic periods, inheriting booming markets with less room for rapid growth. When an economy is already thriving, expansion tends to slow, and maintaining stability becomes a bigger challenge than generating dramatic gains. With all this in mind, one thing remains certain. If something isn't done soon to address the current economic turmoil, the uncertainty will only deepen. Whether the market turns bullish or bearish remains to be seen, but one thing is for sure, the stakes have never been higher. If you enjoyed watching this video and would love to explore more exciting videos like it, click on any of the cards on your screen. Just when you thought Canada was all maple syrup and polite apologies, Justin Trudeau decided to roll up his sleeves and throw some punches back after Trump's tariff threats. Trudeau isn't playing nice anymore.
We're insulted. And we're angry. But we're Canadian, which means we're going to stand up for each other. We're going to fight. And we're going to win.
But hold up, it's not just politics. Canadians on the street aren't exactly thrilled either.
I'm not ready to pay 1 cent more. Already prices are high.
Looks like Trudeau's not alone in this fight. Let's see how Trudeau's bold move might shake things up even more. Trump hits Canada with tariffs. US President Donald Trump just made life a little harder for American wallets. On Tuesday, he started charging a new 25% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada. He also hit China with extra tariffs. So now, we're officially in trade war territory. Why is Trump shaking things up like this? He says Mexico, Canada, and China haven't done enough to stop fentanyl, a dangerous drug, from coming into America. To him, tariffs are payback time. Trump told Congress, other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn. He even promised more tariffs starting April 2nd. But here's the catch. This trade fight affects a massive $2.2 trillion worth of goods every year. That means prices at your favorite stores are likely to jump higher. And that's not great news for Americans who are already fed up with rising prices. China isn't backing down either. They fired back with a strong message. If war is what the US wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is still hopeful, though. He told reporters there might be some room for compromise with Mexico and Canada. The US talked with both countries all day, trying to reach a deal. Donald Trump has his own special way of fixing problems. If you ask him why he's putting huge tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China, he'll say it's all about drugs, trade, and fairness. But mostly, it's about proving he's not running the stupid country anymore. Trump explained it like this. Last year, Customs and Border Protection seized enough fentanyl to kill every American 20 times over. He blamed Mexico and Canada for not doing their job to keep these drugs out. The White House insists it only manages to stop a fraction of the dangerous drugs sneaking in. So, Trump decided it was time for tough action. But is this tariff battle really about protecting America, or is Trump just angry about losing money? He complained, the USA has major deficits with Canada, Mexico, and China, and almost all countries, owes $36 trillion, and we're not going to be the stupid country any longer. Sounds like he's a bit annoyed, doesn't it? Trump then bragged about how important America's market is to other countries. Trade accounts for 67% of Canada's GDP. GDP, 73% of Mexico's GDP, and 37% of China's GDP, but only 24% of US GDP, he pointed out. In other words, these countries need America more than America needs them, at least according to Trump. He admitted his tariffs might cause some pain, but insists it will all be worth it. The question is, worth it for who exactly? If we take a closer look, even federal prison could not stop one drug boss from running his network. In June 2024, Jesus Amurahabi Celestine Ortega was indicted for drug trafficking. He was already locked up in Florence, Colorado for other crimes. That did not stop him. He had a smuggled phone and kept business running from behind bars. He was moving meth, heroin, and fentanyl across the country. His network reached North Dakota, Minnesota, California, Colorado, Georgia, Missouri, Texas, and Arizona. He was not just selling drugs. He was also moving drug money from the US to Mexico. Now he and 8 others are facing life in prison for drug charges. The money laundering charges could add another 20 years. Drug networks reach everywhere. They run from prisons. They move money across borders. Now they have even taken over daycares. In September 2023, Nicholas Feliz Dominici was dropped off at Divino Niño Daycare in the Bronx. He never made it home. The 22-month-old was exposed to fentanyl and died. 3 other children were poisoned but survived. The person running the daycare, Gray Mendez, had another business. She was running a drug operation right under the kids' feet. Law enforcement found over 11 kilograms of fentanyl and heroin hidden under the playroom floor. That much fentanyl could kill 500,000 people. Mendez was caught. She was sentenced to 45 years in prison after pleading guilty to drug charges. But that does not erase what happened. A daycare should be a safe place. Instead, it became a drug den. This is not the first time Trump has played hardball with tariffs. He believes making things more expensive forces other countries to listen. He has done it with China. He has done it with Mexico. Now it is Canada's turn. He thinks hitting their wallets will make them take drug smuggling more seriously. His biggest push is getting Ukraine to hand over $500 billion worth of rare earth minerals. He says if Ukraine wants help, they need to start giving back. He does not like how Zelensky is playing the game. He even called him a dictator, which did not sit well with other world leaders. But Trump does not care about that. He only cares about deals. Trudeau fires back. The drug war is not just about smugglers and border security. It is now tangled up in politics, and Canada is not backing down. Trump slapped a 25% tariff on Canadian imports, saying Canada needs to do more to stop drugs. But Justin Trudeau is not sitting quietly.
We're insulted, and we're angry, but we're Canadian, which means we're going to stand up for each other, we're going to fight, and we're going to win.
He says Donald Trump's new trade war is just a dumb plan to wreck Canada's economy. Trudeau thinks Trump wants Canada to fail so badly that the US can easily take over. Trudeau made these bold claims right after Trump slammed Canada and Mexico with a huge tariffs. Trump even put an extra 10% charge on Canada's energy exports. Trudeau quickly fought back with new taxes aimed at American products. In his speech, Trudeau reminded Canadians, "We've been in tough spots before, but we have not only survived, we have emerged stronger than ever, because when it comes to defending our great nation, there is no price we all aren't willing to pay, and today is no different." This is all happening as Trudeau gets ready to step down. His party will pick a new leader this Sunday. Before leaving, Trudeau warned that fighting between allies is exactly what Canada's enemies want. He pointed out how strange it is that Trump attacks Canada but acts friendly toward Russia and its leader, Vladimir Putin. Trump keeps making jokes about Canada joining the US, but Trudeau said that's never going to happen. To hit back,
The one thing he has said repeatedly, that what he wants is to see a total collapse of the Canadian economy, because that'll make it easier to annex us, is the second half of his thought. Now, first of all, that's never going to happen. We will never be the 51st state.
Canada will tax $107 billion worth of American goods coming into the country. The first taxes start right away on $30 billion of goods. Taxes on the rest will begin in 3 weeks, giving Canadian companies time to prepare. Trudeau didn't just talk to Canadians, though. He spoke directly to Americans, too. He said, "We don't want to see you hurt, but your government has chosen to do this to you. As of this morning, markets are down, and inflation is set to rise dramatically all across your country. Your government has chosen to put American jobs at risk at the thousands of workplaces that succeed because of materials from Canada or because of consumers in Canada." Then Trudeau turned directly to Trump himself.
Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, This is a very dumb thing to do.
Donald Trump says he put big tariffs on Canada because they weren't stopping fentanyl from entering the US, but Justin Trudeau called Trump's reason completely bogus, completely unjustified, completely false. In reality, very little fentanyl comes into the US from Canada. It's so small that the US Drug Agency didn't even mention Canada in a big report from 2020. Still, Trump doubled down. He jumped on social media to warn Canada that any payback from them would mean even tougher moves from America, because nothing says friendship like threats on social media, right? Trump's tough approach ended up uniting Canadians like never before. Leaders from all sides are now standing strong together against the US. Doug Ford, who runs Ontario, Canada's richest province, stepped up in a big way. He promised to make sure Americans feel pain if Trump's taxes keep going. Ford plans to charge a huge 25% tax on electricity going to 3 American states. Ford didn't stop there. He took American wines and spirits off the shelves in Ontario. He also banned US companies from bidding on government jobs, and to show he was really serious, Ford even tore up a deal with Elon Musk's Starlink company. Ford said he felt terrible about these moves since he has good friends among American governors, but he insisted he had no choice. The US government needed to get the message loud and clear. Ford had a little fun. He said Trump's tariffs would send America's stock market downhill faster than their bobsled team. When the market drops, that's the people speaking. Isn't this a shame? Every country is very aware that if the American government is willing to do this to their own closest neighbor, ally, and friend, everyone is vulnerable to a trade war, Ford said, pointing out the cost of Trump's decisions. He finished by reminding everyone that if America could turn on its closest friend like Canada, no country was safe from Trump's trade war. The longer Trump's tariffs last, the worse things look for Canada. If Trump keeps pushing, things could go from bad to awful really fast. François Legault, who leads Quebec, is already sounding the alarm. He warned that his province might lose up to 160,000 jobs in just a few months. Legault isn't just worried, he's angry. He wants Trump to pay the price for choices that don't even make sense for Americans. Tim Houston, leader of Nova Scotia, didn't hold back either, called Trump short-sighted, and said Trump is just throwing his power around because he can. After the tariffs kicked in, Houston described the situation as pure chaos for Canadians. Next door, Newfoundland and Labrador took quick action too. The government there ordered liquor stores to remove all American products right away. Andrew Furey, the province's leader, asked people to buy local Canadian products more than ever. Even Alberta's tough-talking leader Danielle Smith spoke up. She's usually friendly to American oil buyers, but this time she called Trump's move an unjustifiable economic attack on Canadians. She said it was foolish and a total failure. Clearly, Trump's new taxes haven't just stirred up anger, they've united Canadians from all sides against him. Trump versus Trudeau, a long-time feud. Justin Trudeau is standing strong against Trump's latest taxes, but these two aren't new to fighting. They've spent years trading insults, throwing public punches, and fighting over trade.
Well, Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years.
Some people think Trump still holds a grudge because his hotels in Canada flopped. Maybe losing money there made him cranky toward Canada forever. Others on social media have another funny theory. They point to a 2019 photo from a big meeting in France. In it, Trudeau seemed about to kiss Trump's wife, Melania. Was Trump annoyed that Canada's Prime Minister looked charming next to the First Lady? Maybe Trump's jealousy is behind all these new taxes. Whatever the reason, Trump seems extra annoyed with Canada lately. Canada is famous for being nice, so Trump's harsh treatment feels strange. It has thrown Canadian politics into a mess. People are confused and frustrated about why Trump picks fights with one of America's best friends. Even Stephen Moore, who once advised Trump, is puzzled. Moore said, "I can't quite figure it out." He knows Trump and Trudeau don't get along. With Trump, he said, everything feels personal, and Moore is right. Back in 2018, after a big meeting in Quebec, Trump called Trudeau very dishonest and weak on social media. Trump accused Trudeau of lying and even threatened to put extra taxes on cars coming from Canada. Trump's team jumped in too. Peter Navarro, one of his top advisors, said there was a special place in hell for leaders like Trudeau. That line shocked people. Navarro later apologized, but the damage was done. Trade was always a big fight between them. Donald Trump has always had a thing about Canadian dairy farms. You'd think he has a personal grudge against every cow north of the border, but what's the real reason Trump hates Canadian milk so much? It all goes back to one number Trump loves to throw around: a 270% tariff that Canada charges on American dairy. He tweeted about it back in 2018 and hasn't stopped bringing it up since. That number sounds crazy, and Trump knows exactly how to make it sound like Canada is robbing American farmers blind. Here's the catch though. Canada does charge super high taxes on imported dairy products, but Canada isn't picking on America only. They charge those high taxes to everyone. It's their way of protecting their own dairy farmers. But Trump can't stand these protections. For him, it's all unfair. He believes Canada is cheating American farmers out of money, and that makes him angry. After all, Trump hates losing money, especially when it's his voters losing it. Things got even worse in 2019 at a NATO summit in London. A short video appeared on Twitter, thanks to Canada's CBC, showing Justin Trudeau having a little gossip session with other world leaders. Trudeau seemed relaxed, talking casually like someone at lunch with friends, not like a prime minister at a big event. In the video, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was there, alongside French leader Emmanuel Macron.
Timekeeping.
Trudeau joked about Trump, saying Macron was late because Trump turned a quick chat into a 40-minute press event. He laughed, saying Trump's staff looked shocked by whatever he said. We didn't get the whole story though, since loud noises in the room blocked Macron's words, but the damage was done. Trump quickly fired back, clearly annoyed. He responded, "He's two-faced. I find him to be a nice guy, but the truth is I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2% of national GDP towards defense, and I guess he's not very happy about it." After feeling the heat, Trudeau tried to fix things. He told everyone the leaders weren't laughing at Trump's speech. Instead, they were just chatting about Camp David, the place for the next G7 meeting. Then, Trudeau insisted everything was totally fine between him and Trump. "I have a very good relationship with Trump," he promised. But after all these comments, some Canadians probably rolled their eyes a bit. By 2024 was taking the feud to a whole new level. He called Justin Trudeau the governor of the great state of Canada. Trump made fun of Trudeau after he threatened Canada with heavy taxes on trade. Late at night, Trump posted on his social media, "I look forward to seeing the governor again soon, so that we may continue our in-depth talks on tariffs and trade, the results of which will be truly spectacular for all." Trudeau's office didn't say anything back right away. Maybe they're still trying to think of a clever comeback. Trump has been joking lately that Canada should just join America as its 51st state. He even suggested it right to Trudeau's face during a dinner they had recently. Trump thinks the US loses too much money on trade with Canada and Mexico. He says America pays Canada more than $100 billion every year, and Mexico even more. Trump asked, "Why are we subsidizing these countries?" For Trump, trade is simple. He thinks if other countries are making money, America must be losing. Trudeau didn't respond to Trump's jab right away, but he's probably busy thinking up ways to fight back. He did promise Canada would hit the US with its own tariffs. Trudeau's office stayed quiet when asked for a reaction to Trump's teasing. How this tariff war could shake up the economy. Donald Trump's trade war is hitting hard, and the stock market isn't liking it one bit.
Well, look, there's no question that Warren Buffett is right, that if you just raise tariffs across the board, then things will be more expensive. There's very little doubt about that, so Warren Buffett is right.
After Trump threw his new taxes at Canada, Mexico, and China, the markets went into free fall. The S&P 500 sank by more than 1%, the Dow dropped by over 300 points, and the Nasdaq, it lost almost 500 points. It looks like investors aren't loving Trump's great new plan. These new tariffs aren't small either. They hit about $1.4 trillion worth of goods. That's a lot of stuff from Canada, Mexico, and China. Experts say prices for cars, food, and many everyday things will shoot way up. Good news though, Trump promised the pain would only be temporary. He even thinks Americans won't mind a little short-term chaos. Very comforting, but people who study money disagree. They think prices on groceries and cars will jump fast. They also worry thousands of Americans could lose their jobs because of this trade war. Trudeau himself warned Americans that Trump's tariffs mean higher prices for food, gas, and cars. And what did China do when Trump started playing rough? They slapped their own taxes right back on America. Starting March 10th, US chicken, pork, soybeans, and beef will cost even more in China. They're also punishing 15 American companies, stopping them from doing business in China. It's like a giant game of who can tax the hardest, and nobody's winning. Trump's attitude about all this is pretty casual. He brushed off the problems by saying there could be some temporary short-term disruption. In other words, just a little trouble. No big deal, right? But economists say it's not just a little trouble. Trump's decisions could really hurt America's economy. The big question now is how far he'll take this fight and how much regulation regular people will end up paying for it. Economist Eswar Prasad says Trump's tariff plan creates an enormous amount of uncertainty for companies. Big companies hate surprises. They plan carefully and need to know what to expect next. Trump's sudden moves have thrown their plans upside down. Prasad warned that this uncertainty might stop companies from growing or even hiring new workers. Douglas Irwin, an expert on trade, pointed out another big problem. He said, past trade agreements simply don't mean much if the president can unilaterally violate them and impose tariffs with no checks at all. Basically, Trump just ripped up the rules he made himself 5 years ago. Now even his own trade deals can't be trusted. To make things even weirder, Trump's new tariffs came suddenly. Last time, he took time to investigate before acting, but this time, Trump just declared a national emergency and made the tariffs happen right away. His reason? Protecting America from drugs and immigration. But many experts think that reason feels weak at best. Businesses are confused too. Gregory Husishin, a trade lawyer, said companies are nervous about the future. He explained, I've talked to multiple companies that are saying, we're not moving forward with any investment. We need this to be settled. Trump's unpredictable decisions mean companies don't know how to plan. But it's not just big companies feeling dizzy from Trump's tariff roller coaster. Small businesses are feeling it too. The confusion is everywhere, and companies have no clue what's coming next. The Institute for Supply Management asked companies how they felt about Trump's latest moves. Turns out, they're not exactly thrilled. One transportation company complained customers are pausing on new orders as a result of uncertainty regarding tariffs. In simple terms, no one wants to order anything new until Trump figures out what he's doing next. And the hits just keep coming. Taylor Samuels owns a bar and restaurant in Dallas called Las Almas Rotas. He buys most of his alcohol from Mexico. Now, Trump's tariff chaos has thrown his plans into question. He wanted to build a new restaurant soon, but now he's unsure if he can afford it. That construction budget is now under review and may likely be delayed, he explained. Over in Chicago, Sandhya Dandamudi sells stone for projects, including the Obama Presidential Center. Developers make budgets years in advance, but Trump's sudden tariffs weren't part of their plans. Those budgets will be blown, she said. Small businesses like hers could lose contracts or even shut down. Then there's Holly Siderwand, who runs First Fill Spirits in Saratoga Springs, New York. She planned to nearly double the size of her shop in 2025, but Trump's tariffs forced her to press pause. We have no plans of adding more shelving or space for new items, she admitted. This will delay the growth of our business, making us a bit stagnant. It's not just bars and stone suppliers feeling squeezed by Trump's tariffs. Small shops in places like San Francisco's Chinatown are hurting too. Edward Lau runs Elysian Enterprises in San Francisco's Chinatown. Trump's 10% tariffs on Chinese goods have forced him to raise prices. Many of Lau's customers are elderly and on fixed incomes. He's worried the community, still recovering from the pandemic, will suffer even more if tariffs double. And if city stores aren't enough, farmers in the Midwest aren't having much fun either. Barb Kalbach from Iowa is feeling the stress too. China and Mexico are responding to Trump's tariffs by taxing American crops like corn and soybeans. Kalbach fears these tariffs will drop crop prices further, putting farmers already struggling with losses in even deeper trouble. So while Trump talks big about teaching other countries a lesson, small business owners and farmers across America wonder why they're the ones paying the price. People have lots of opinions about Trump's new moves. Some think his rules will help the economy. Others, like financial expert Darius Dale, aren't so sure. Darius Dale is the CEO of 42 Macro. He believes Trump's current approach could slow down the economy much faster than most expect. In an interview, Dale explained clearly,
One of the things that our grid model has been signaling for months now is that U.S. economic growth is likely to slow and actually slow faster than consensus expects. So that's new. That's different from where we've been for most of the past 2+ years. And
before Trump's second term began, Dale's models showed steady growth. But now, thanks to Trump's tough measures, they're seeing something very different. Dale even thinks Trump might be hurting the economy on purpose, trying to reset it to match his own plans. Dale sees Trump acting a bit like Ronald Reagan did years ago. When Reagan first took office, the economy took a big hit. His bold moves shook things up, leading to some pain before any improvements. Dale calls this kitchen sinking, describing it like this.
They're essentially trying to transition from a demand side economy and fiscal policy to a supply side economy and fiscal policy. And that process could potentially be painful, at least in the short term. And this is exactly what we saw when Ronald Reagan became president.
When Reagan first became president, stocks fell hard and the US economy slid into recession. But after this tough start, things eventually got better. Many think Trump is now following Reagan's risky strategy, making things worse first, hoping they'll improve later. Trump's no negotiation stand on tariffs with Canada and Mexico makes the whole thing even scarier. The moment Trump returned to the White House, the market became a roller coaster. At first, investors investors were hopeful. They thought Trump might bring big tax cuts and fewer rules, but soon he began talking tough tariffs and strict immigration laws, making investors nervous. They quickly began selling off stocks, worried about what might come next. Now, nobody knows exactly what will happen. Will Trump's big gamble pay off, leading to a stronger market later, or will all this confusion drag America into economic trouble for years? Financial experts are split. Some think Trump's approach will cause lasting damage and chaos. Others see mixed signals, unsure what Trump is really trying to do. Many investors still think Republicans like Trump are good for the market because they're known to support business-friendly rules. But Trump's moves have everyone scratching their heads. One thing is certain: whatever Trump does next, it will shape America's financial future for years. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, check out the suggested content on your screen by clicking one of the cards displayed.